One of the most common questions we get on our YouTube channel is, how much can a landlord increase rent in the state of California? The answers are in these 3 envelopes right here. Hey there, Christian Walsh, real estate agent with Wire Associates. We've been helping the smartest landlords and renters understand their rights before things go wrong. In this important guide for both renters and landlords, we are going to cover the 3 property types and how much rent can be increased on each of those 3 property types. And remember, we can't give tax or legal advice, but for the most honest and up-to-date real estate advice, subscribe to this channel. And don't forget, before a landlord can actually do a rent increase, the renter must be month to month, or they must be coming up on the end of a lease. If they are in the middle of a lease, a landlord can't change the rent unless it was already negotiated and in the lease. Number 1. Local rent control. So for these property types, local rent control means that either at the county or the city level, the property has a special local regulation that caps how much the rent can be increased. In order to find out whether you have a local rent control ordinance, seems obvious, but the first thing that you need to know is, where are you? So if a local city has a rent control ordinance, the first thing you want to make sure is that the property you're in actually falls within that city and falls within the type of property that is subject to the rent control ordinance. In order to determine whether a property has a local rent control ordinance, you're going to want to do a search for the city and or the county, and you're going to use the words rent control, and then also try out renter protections. And when you do that, invariably you'll find some sort of information on the local rent control ordinance. For example, here's LAHD's website. This is for LA City, talks about the rent stabilized properties, the RSO properties, and explains to renters or landlords what that means. So important to look for which properties fall under the local rent control ordinance, and that is explained right here. If you don't find an easy resource to it, you're going to want to actually look at the municipal code, or you can call into the city and see if you can get an answer. And some city or county websites are even going to have a rent calculator. In fact, LAHD does have a rent calculator and shows a landlord how much annual increase can be given for rent and when that annual increase can be given. So that is important for you to understand your local rent control provisions. As far as figuring out where the property is, this is a cool tool that some areas have. You're going to Google for the city or county and GIS, and they'll give you a service like this. This is for LA City. This is ZMIS. And on ZMIS, we can find if the property is actually in the city limits. The ones on the edges may actually fall into a different city. In this case, the ZMIS site also tells us here in the corner whether the property is subject to the rent stabilization ordinance. So this is a recent listing of mine, and it is indeed subject to the RSO. Number 2. Statewide rent control, otherwise known as the Tenant Protection Act. So properties that don't have a local rent control ordinance may fall under the statewide Tenant Protection Act, which has special protections for rent increases. The Tenant Protection Act went into effect in July of 2020. We've released a ton of content on it. We'll keep it coming. We're actually halfway through the life of this legislation. It's theoretically going to sunset in 2030. We'll see what actually happens there. So if a large corporation owns a property, whether it's a single-family home, condo, duplex, or larger, those properties are subject to the Tenant Protection Act. Non-owner occupied duplexes are subject to the Tenant Protection Act, and triplexes and larger are subject to the Tenant Protection Act. Newer construction, so that's any building that received its certificate of occupancy 15 years or sooner, they are exempt from the Tenant Protection Act, no matter how big they are and no matter who owns them. Even if a corporation owns them, they are exempt from the Tenant Protection Act. That is a rolling date, so as time goes on, buildings will fall out of this and start to fall under the Tenant Protection Act, assuming they have 2 units or more. So how do you calculate rent increases under the Tenant Protection Act? It's 5% plus the Consumer Price Index. We're going to run through those numbers right now. For properties subject to the Tenant Protection Act, we're going to use a California Consumer Price Index for these metro areas. We're using the year-over-year change in CPI from April to April in the areas where that number is released. If it isn't, for example, in San Diego, Carlsbad, we use the March to March number, and this will be added to 5%, but this isn't fun and easy to look at. So I made this chart, and here's your handy dandy chart, the maximum rent increase from August of 2025 through the end of July 2026, broken down by metro areas using the California Consumer Price Index. LA, Orange County, the maximum increase for Tenant Protection Act protected properties will be 8%. Riverside, San Bernardino, 7.5%. San Diego, 8.8%, Alameda, Contra Costa, Marin, San Fran, San Mateo, 6.3%. That's the lowest. Then all other counties. If you weren't in that list, then you're in the all other counties list. You're at 7.7%. There's your maximum increase for this year for properties subject to the Tenant Protection Act. And finally, in envelope number 3, no rent control, Tenant Protection Act exempt. These properties have no rent cap, so theoretically a landlord can increase the rent as much as they'd like. In order for a property to qualify for this, it can't be owned by a big corporation. It must be a single-family home or a condo or an owner-occupied duplex. Additionally, larger buildings that are 15 years or newer are also exempt. But there's an important point. In order to be exempt from the Tenant Protection Act, the landlord needs to do this. In order for a property to have its Tenant Protection Act exemption and to have no cap on the rental increase amount, it's important for the property to match the exempt property types, and capital A and D, the property owner must give the exemption language we're about to show you. Now, this happens to be the California Association of Realtors form because I'm a California Association of Realtor. It's called the Rent Cap and Just Cause Addendum. We've talked about it in many, many videos. It does not have to be this specific form. This just happens to have the required language. And what's the required language? It's right here. Notice of exemption. This property is not subject to the rent limits imposed by 1947.12, etc. This is what the law specifies must be on the form in order for the exemption to apply. A renter needs to know about the exemption. So without this exemption language, a property does not have the exemption from the Tenant Protection Act, and the rent increase is capped, plus there's some other protections we won't go into in this video. And how much notice must a landlord give for a rent increase? This law has changed, and we still find people don't understand it. For any rent increase that is 10% or less within a year period, that will be a 30-day notice. For any rent increase greater than 10% in a year period, that will be a 90-day notice. In order for a rental increase to be valid, it must follow these rules and give sufficient notice. And don't forget, we're real estate agents based in Southern California. Don't even think about making a move without reaching out to us first. Let us know your rent increase questions below and tell us your rent increase stories. We want to hear how it's going out there. Subscribe to our free weekly email newsletter so you don't miss any updates like this. This video right here is the one YouTube thinks you need to see. Thanks for tuning in. This has been Christian Walsh, real estate agent with Wire Associates, and we can't wait to work with you.